One of the most common things you'll do when writing programs is get input from users. And in a text-based Java program, one of the tools for getting input from users is a scanner. A scanner can use any kind of text input, files, command line input, a string itself. For our purposes today, we're going to use an example of command line input. So the first thing we need to do is to create a new class. We'll call it scanExample. We've created the class. We also are going to need a main method for it, since that is where the program starts. And what we would want to do is to create a new scanner variable here and tell that scanner that it's going to read from system.in, which is command line input. But you'll notice that the program says it cannot resolve the symbol scanner. This is because scanner is an outside class, and we'll need to import Java util scanner to be able to use it. Once we've got the scanner set up, then we could read some simple input values from it. For instance, we could read a double. That would say be the amount of money someone earned over some period of time. We create the variable for it, and we tell the scanner to read the next double. That will just give it any double value that the user enters. As long as the user enters the right kind of data, it'll work perfectly. There's some error checking for this that we won't do today, but it's good to use when you're actually creating a real program. Let's input the number of days over which the user or the person earned this amount of money by reading it as an integer, because we're going to assume that they're whole days they worked. And then finally, let's read in a name for the person, which will be a string, and we'll read in the whole line that the user uses to input it. This way we could get spaces, we could get whatever kind of string data that we wanted. When they hit enter, then it will read the entire thing that was on that line. Then I'm going to output it so that we can see the result of our program. And when we do this, we'll see that there's one problem with how this program was set up. So I'm using printf so that I can nicely insert all of the different values that I want to. I can do %s to put the person's name as a string. I then can also format the double to have 2 decimal places. That's what the %.2f will do. And then I will put %d for the number for the integer. And then I have to tell it the 3 variables to draw those from. Name will fill in the string for %s. Earned will fill in the dollar amount, and then days will fill in the integer there for %d. Then when I run the program, I'm going to want to give it some input values. So for instance, I'll write out what our input values will be in advance here, and this will be useful once we encounter our error to see what the issue was that came up. So 102.1 for the amount earned, 2 for the days, and Sophia for the name. Now when I run it, I'll try inputting those different values. 102.1, it accepts it. 2, you will notice it didn't even give a chance to enter the name, and then it went ahead and printed, and it says blank, nothing there, earned $102.10 over 2 days. The reason for this has to do with the fact that we're reading in data types like double and int, and then we're reading an entire line. So what happens is this. The first input that the scanner sees is 102.1, and it can read that in perfectly fine as a double. It stops as soon as it stops seeing digits, numeric digits. It will not read the new line that follows it. That's okay, because next int is perfectly fine with reading blank space until it sees digits. And then it would read however many digits it saw all in a row. So it could say 210,563,001, and it would still read all of those digits. It would stop again as soon as it stops seeing integer digits. Then there's a call to next line. Next line stops as soon as it sees a new line. So what happens with that next line is it reads whatever is remaining on the line. In this case, that's nothing. There's no text left on that line. It sees the new line, it reads past it, and then it stops. So name got an empty string because they read nothing from the line, read the new line, removes the new line from the input, and then leaves nothing there. The solution to this is to tell the scanner, after we read things like integers and doubles, that we want it to move past whatever new line it has there. So we can tell it, next line, we have to do this for the integer. It's probably safest to do this after any time you read a double or an int that you know will be on its own line. So we can read it after the double. We have to read it after the integer so that this next line call here gets the actual next line and not a new line. So the way this is written now, next double will read 102.1 and stop. The next line call here will read past the next line. It does nothing with it because it's not stored in a variable. Then it reads the 2 as the integer and stops after the 2. Then it will read the next line, or the new line there, with this sc.nextLine call here. Again, it does nothing with it because it's not stored in a variable. Then it will read Sophia and the new line that follows it. This is important because if we were reading in, say, 5 names, we would not have to do next line calls in between those because next line will read past the new line character. So if I wanted to read more names, I could just say name 2 equals sc.nextLine and so on without next line calls in between them to throw away a new line. If you did that, it would throw away the whole actual line. So this program we can run again to see if it now meets our expectations. 102.1 for the earned amount, 2 days. You see now it is allowing me to type the name, and as soon as I press enter, it says Sophia earned $102.10 over 2 days. So the important things to remember are you can use the scanner to read in particular types of data, like a double or an integer, but those will not process past new lines. So if you're also reading in text as lines using nextLine, after each call to nextInt or nextDouble, if they're going to be on their own line, you should call to nextLine to make sure that you can still access the next real data and you don't get those empty lines that read in.